Welcome back to The Pale Thread, everybody. Again, I am Kat Martin. I am your host for this episode. So today we dive into the unfortunate events of November 2020, where a beautiful, brilliant young woman lost her life at the hands of a crazed stalker. So today, together, let's pull the thread and see where it leads us. Celeste Manno was a stunning and special young lady, one a mother could only really dream of. Honestly, the relationship that Celeste and Aggie, who's her mother, had was like none other. It was supportive, it was mutual, it was really beautiful. Celeste was born in Italy in 1996 to her mother Aggie De Moro. She was born in Italy, but they immigrated to Melbourne, Australia when she was a young girl. She has a older brother and a younger brother. The younger brother is called Alessandro, and her older brother is named Jaden. In high school, Celeste was the dream girl, the dream friend, the dream daughter, the dream girlfriend. She was smart, she was kind, she was popular, she was a cheerleader, so that kind of, all goes together. Could never be me. And her radiance continued into her early 20s. In 2015, she attended the RMIT University and graduated in 2019. She studied criminology and psychology with the goal of eventually being a psychologist. She loved kind of finding the answers to things and to problems and understanding people. Helping people was a big thing for Celeste. She was so kind, and her intentions were always quite pure. Throughout university, she stayed very close with her mother, even after. When she graduated in 2019, she got a job at a Circle call center. She still lived at home with her mother, and even if she was an adult, technically, at 23 years old, she still, every end of day, her mom would come into her room, they would chat about their day, her mom would wish her good night, go on her merry way, and Celeste would go to sleep. When she got that job at the Circle call center, she very quickly stood out as someone who had a ton of potential. So she was promoted to team lead quite quickly. And she said that as a team lead, she learned how to use her skills at problem solving, at people skills, people management. She was really good as a team lead, and she was very devoted too. Like anywhere she went, she was very appreciated at work, not only by her colleagues, but also by her supervisors. I do think that that's why when one of her colleagues was terminated, no, that doesn't sound right. When one of her colleagues was let go, they asked her to accompany him outside of the building. I'm guessing that having a young, kind, gentle person walk you out of your last day when you've been fired, I think it's kind of reassuring. I think that they did that so that he wouldn't make a scene. The employee that she was accompanying out of the building, his name was Louis Seiko. She knew him. I'm not sure if she was his supervisor, but she knew him as a colleague, but only as a colleague. She only had a professional relationship with him. And something happened when she basically wished him good luck. She went to shake his hand and she was like, good luck in your next adventure and whatnot. And he pulled her towards him and he gave her a kiss on the cheek that really didn't make Celeste feel safe. So she basically backed away and said, okay, well, have a good day. And she tried being polite and not hurt his feelings, but she basically, left that interaction quite quickly. When she got home, she told her mom about that awkward moment, and her mom was Celeste's biggest fan. She was right, but she kept saying how beautiful her daughter is, and she really was. Celeste was radiant from inside out, but her outside was also extremely pretty. So when Celeste spoke about her interaction with Seiko and how it made her uncomfortable, and she was slightly not scared but uncomfortable, her mom said, you're so dramatic. He probably has a crush on you and has had a crush on you for multiple months, and he basically shot his shot and didn't think much else of it. After the events of that day, Louis found Celeste's Instagram account and started messaging her a lot. And he was very clear with his intentions, and he reached out to her and told her that he had a huge crush on her, that he was very interested in being more than coworkers, and he just wanted to hang out with her. And her answer to him was very, very nice. It was very polite. It was very Celeste-like. And I think that when I read you this quote, I think you'll see what kind of person she is. Amongst other things, she said, quote, "As much as I appreciate this, I only feel a professional type of way towards you, and I wish you all the best in your new job and journey." So even though he's made her uncomfortable multiple times, she is still staying very nice, very kind, but she's also being very clear. And you can see that she has a talent for communication, because not a lot of people would have been able to stay nice and stay kind when you want to tell someone, "You're freaking me out, stop it." But she thought that was going to be the end of it, and it really, really wasn't. The more she rejected him, the more he insisted. And at first, she didn't share this with too many people. She kept it quite close to the vest, thinking it's not a big deal. I'll just, he will let me be at some point. And sadly, he never did. He just got worse and worse. She did also meet another gentleman at work, but with him, it was more than just professional. She started getting really interested into this guy named Chris, and he started being her friend. So they struck up a friendship, and she still didn't tell him about what was going on, especially I think because they all worked at the same place at some point. So at first she didn't share exactly what was happening with Chris, but at some point Seiko started creating multiple fake accounts when she kept blocking him. So every time that he would reach out to her, she would block him, and then a couple minutes later he would have a brand new account and he would be messaging her again. And at that point she got nervous, so she started telling her mom about it, and she also started a romantic relationship with Chris. And so she shared with him what was going on, and her mom was very, very adamant that they needed to go to the police quickly. She wanted this to be nipped in the bud, and they went to the police, and police answered basically, technically right now, he hasn't done anything criminal. So when you tell girls, be careful not to get assaulted instead of teaching the boys not to assault, this was basically perpetuating this, in the sense that they couldn't do anything legally because this wasn't stalking per se, which I think it is. And I know that there's some subtleties in the law, but to me that's stalking, that's cyber stalking. Anyways, so they told her, remove yourself from social media completely and he won't have a way to reach out to you. But to me, that's avoiding the issue. The issue is him, it's not her. She shouldn't be changing anything that she wants to be doing in her life. She wants to have a social presence, online social presence. She should be allowed to. So not only did they do nothing with this, they didn't speak to Seiko, but they didn't even take down his name. So even though they made the effort, and honestly, it's probably very stressful to go see police and say I'm being stalked. So even though they had done this, Celeste and Aggie, the police didn't even take the name down. So if she came back and explained that this was happening again, this would pop up as first offense, which I think is absolutely nuts. So anyways, so I think that at first Celeste thought he was only stalking her online, but at some point she did see his car next to their workplace. Now she's realizing that he is not only cyber stalking her, but he is literally stalking her. She first saw his car at her work. Now she's noticing that he knows where she lives because she can see his car around the neighborhood, and she's not being paranoid. She knows that it's his car. And now she becomes unhealthily scared. So she basically starts panicking and making sure every night that everything is locked, that the windows are locked. She starts having panic attacks too. And she started kind of staying home more. She was afraid of leaving the house if she was alone. She would go to friend gatherings a lot less. She was basically losing her spark. Apparently at work, she was having a really hard time also being productive, being focused. I get it. I've never had a stalker, but I understand when you have something that's, bothering you at home and you get to work, you can't really be your best self. So when Aggie realized that this was not getting any better, that this was getting worse, it was escalating, they went back to the police and requested a restraining order. Now, they came a lot better prepared this time. They had receipts, basically. So they brought proof of physical stalking, they brought proof of the cyber stalking, and they weren't dealing with the same police officer either. So he took them much more seriously, and they then realized that the combination of Seiko's actions did now mean stalking, which before, if it was here and there, some messages, it wasn't really considered stalking. But now, with all of the proof that they had, they could say now that it was officially stalking. She applied for a restraining order. That was more trauma, because she had to go in much detail of everything that's happened until now and how scared she was. And also his messages were getting scarier and scarier, because at first he was just saying how much he liked her, how much he loved her, how much he was obsessed with her. But more and more they became very explicit, and then they became vulgar, and then they became violent. So I don't think he's ever threatened to kill her through text, but he was getting a bit more violent. And I will put some examples for you guys here, and you can see his escalation. You can see that his mental health is just declining. So she was granted a restraining order for about a month after the restraining order was given out to Seiko. The stalking stopped, so she wouldn't see his car anywhere. He wasn't following her anymore. She didn't get any messages anymore. No new accounts on Instagram that was messaging her. But she didn't feel 100% safe. She did feel better. She started lightening up again. She was doing better at work. Her boyfriend and her mom saw also the light coming back into Celeste a little bit. Her boyfriend Chris was feeling very helpless in the past months with all this situation. He didn't know how to protect her. So when she started getting better, he was very, very relieved. But Celeste is not dumb. She felt a little bit more relaxed, but she wasn't feeling safe. She was still being cautious when she was at home alone or when she was leaving. And she was feeling as if there was a chance that this was just a break in the whole thing. And she wasn't wrong. And mind you, this is during 2020 period. It got a lot worse for Celeste and Seiko when it was during the pandemic, when everybody was kind of cooped up. It got worse. And apparently, this is a worldwide phenomenon. Stalking grew quite a bit during the pandemic. The National Library of Medicine quotes the following: "An early report of the consequences of COVID-19 on stalking victimization indicated that vulnerability of victims had increased due to the lockdown restrictions, resulting in them feeling imprisoned and unsafe in their own homes. Furthermore, being restricted at home, it became easier for offenders to monitor and approach their targets, both proximally and through the assistance of technological means." I'll put the article below. It's actually quite interesting. The month after he got the restraining order, things got better, but not for long. On November 14th, 2020, Celeste and Chris had a very simple date like they liked to do. She was still quite nervous in being in public spaces, and she was just scared that Seiko was going to pop up at some place. So they had a simple date, and she shared a picture of them together on Instagram. And I don't know exactly when Seiko saw it, but on November 15th, during the evening, before bed, Celeste's mom, as they're used to doing, she went into Celeste's bedroom. They spoke about the plans for her 24th birthday party that was coming up. And she wished her good night, left her alone. And on the morning, November 16th, so at 3:38 a.m., Seiko made his way through the backyard. He broke into Celeste's bedroom through the window. He was armed with a knife and a hammer, and he violently stabbed her 23 times. Strangely enough, he only takes credit for 2 of those stabbing wounds. He says that the rest of the injuries were caused by the shards of glass when he broke the glass, but we all know that's just Absolute bullshit. Her mom could hear thumpings in Celeste's bedroom, but she didn't know exactly what it was. And mind you, it's almost 4 a.m., so you're a bit groggy. She got up and she went to her daughter's bedroom. And when she walked in, Seiko was already gone and Celeste was passed already. When help got there after calling 911, she repeatedly said, "He killed her. He really killed her." So the police officer said, "You know who did this?" And she said yes. And she said that it was the man that had been stalking her for the past months. She confirmed with them that his name was Louis Seiko, a 35-year-old man that had been stalking her young adult daughter for the past months. And they had a restraining order against him, and that he was an ex-colleague. Now, who is Louis Seiko? Louis Seiko was born in 1984, making him 40 years old today. He was born into a very Christian household in Iraq, and then they moved to northern Melbourne through a humanitarian visa in 1992. He had worked at the same place as Celeste at Serco since 2018 and until he was fired in 2019, which we all know as the kickoff for this whole entire ordeal. Seiko didn't run for long. He actually went straight to a police station and confessed. He also said that it was their fault that he did this and that he wanted them to shoot him. So obviously this didn't happen, but I think this was kind of him setting himself up as like he's crazy or something, or like no man in his right mind will confess and come to a police station and then ask, "Please shoot me." I don't like him. Like any good narcissist, he actually in court wanted to represent himself, but Tim Marsh, a barrister, stepped forward to act for him eventually, but at first, of course, he wanted to represent himself. Seiko did plead guilty. I think he tried reverting that at some point, but he ended up pleading guilty in the end. And he tried multiple things during the trial to kind of push back all of the steps. He was like playing with words. I think at some point when he was representing himself, he kept saying, there's errors in the police report. They said I ran to the crime scene, but that's false. I briskly walked. Like he was trying to play with words a little bit. And he, like I said, he changed his plea quite a bit, and then he got final representation. And that case was presented in front of Justice Jane Dixon, and that happened on January 29th, 30th, and 31st of 2024, and the sentencing would be February 29th, 2024 at 3 p.m. So prior to the trial, there was a psychiatrist that evaluated Seiko, and he did say, he listened to his life story and he figured that yes, he did go through some things that were difficult in life, but nothing kind of justified his mental state or his actions of November 16th. And he did diagnose him with 4 things. He had a very severe personality disorder, which he said was the worst he had ever seen in his career. He said he's not psychotic, he's not a psychopath, but he does have a very severe case of personality disorder. He also diagnosed him with severe depression, body dysmorphia. Okay, so 3 things. So basically, personality disorder, body dysmorphia, and deep depression. So all of that little cocktail of mental illness that he has didn't allow him to have perspective on other people's views. So he didn't understand when people would say their own point of view. He couldn't connect with that. So I don't know if I said the name of the psychologist. I don't think so, but it's Dr. Rajan Darji. And they also said you could see throughout the trial also that his mental health was like he's mentally ill. Obviously Seiko, and that you could see some physical signs, like he would be shaking the entire time. And he also started pounding his head when Aggie, Celeste's mom, started screaming at him. It was probably during her testimony or during maybe the victim statements, but he started pounding on his head because I don't know, he couldn't handle it, which makes sense. Dr. Darji also said that in prison, people would have to be careful with him because he is likely to offend again, and if he's ever confronted with a prison guard that he fancies, well, there's a chance that he could be violent towards her or stalkerish towards her as well. Now, for the sentencing, this upset Celeste's mom quite a bit. He was found guilty of murder and he was sentenced to 36 years in prison. What Aggie wanted was life in prison, probably without possibly parole, because you don't want this man on the streets. He's dangerous. So although this was technically a win, he was found guilty. Aggie had a really hard time with letting go of the fact that the life sentence in Australia is very hard to get. So she did start a petition, and I encourage you to go and sign the petition. I have today, and like I said, I'll put the link below. You can go directly to the petition and go sign your name. It takes honestly 2 minutes, and there's already 56,633 signatures on the 75,000 that she's trying to get. I will read you the statement that is on the petition. Feel free to skip this if you want, but it goes like this. My name is Aggie DeMoro. My daughter Celeste Manno was a vibrant 23-year-old whose life was brutally taken by a man who had relentlessly stalked her despite her efforts to protect herself legally. Her killer, after committed premeditated murder, was sentenced to only 36 years in prison. This decision has shaken my belief in our justice system, a system I am now determined to change. I cannot do this alone. I need your help. Celeste was a beacon of love and joy who made everyone she met feel special. But her kindness became her vulnerability when a former co-worker fixated and obsessed took her life in the most horrific manner imaginable. It's clear that our current laws do not sufficiently deter such heinous crimes, nor do they provide real justice to families like mine. From January 2018 to May 2024, 113 murders were sentenced in Victoria for killing 124 people. Only 11 of them received a life sentence. That means only 9.7% of offenders got life. I am advocating for mandatory life sentences for murderers because it is the strongest way to denounce the crime. Life for life. I also believe that if life sentences were mandatory, they would prevent these tragedies from reoccurring. I am calling on the Victorian government to implement all 45 recommendations from the stalking report and reconsider the electronic monitoring device. We need stronger laws against stalking and violence, especially towards women. Despite taking all available legal precautions, Celeste was not protected. She was let down by police incompetence and failed again by the courts. Celeste's case should have set a precedent for all stalking offenders who escalate to murder. Justice Jane Dixon could have and should have taken the opportunity to set this precedent, but chose not to. A different judge might have decided otherwise, which is why I'm insisting on an appeal. One person's decision and discretion they are allowed shouldn't stop an appeal court from reconsidering the case. Please take a moment to consider, if someone dear to you faced Celeste's fate, wouldn't you demand the fullest extent of justice? I am pleading with you to sign and share our petition. Help us ensure that Celeste's legacy is not just one of tragedy, but one of change. End quote. So again, I'm going to link the petition below, and I encourage you strongly to go and sign it. I do believe that the laws are not currently strong enough when it comes to stalking and violence against women. And if my channel can help even just a little bit, I will be very pleased with that. So, just a note, I hope I was able to paint the picture of how beautiful of a human Celeste was, but also just the way that people talk about her. During her funeral, her mother expressed a ton of guilt from not being able to protect her daughter during that night, but there's only so much she could do. So that's also part of why I really want people to go and sign that petition. But I thought it was quite adorable, the quote that her younger brother Alessandro said at her funeral. He said, "I can't annoy you anymore. I can't see that gorgeous, infectious smile. You can't tag me in funny posts anymore, and you can't show me a new song. You can't come into my room and randomly and hug me and kiss me and annoy the hell out of me." End quote. So keep Celeste in mind and make that little tiny effort to go and click on that link. For me, this is it for this case. I wish Aggie all of the possible joy she can have for the rest of her life, as well as any other person that was affected by Celeste's death. I'm very thankful that you were here and listened to me ramble on about Celeste. I hope you see me in the next video and that I get to interact with you in the comments below. Until then, stay curious and stay safe. Bye.